There he is.
Hey,
Look at these graphics and a drum click. And I mean, this is pretty professional, guys.
Not bad, not bad, not bad for a couple of yahoos, huh?
Yeah. I watched your show the other day. Spencer just keeps this thing moving, man. Like, I'm worried I won't have enough time to say anything here.
Dude, somebody has to. If it wasn't for Spencer, Strazza and I would just keep going on and on and on forever, you know?
Yeah, we tell him it's his job to shut us up and keep us moving.
So. Yeah.
By the way, what's up with Lind's camera? It looked like a Sports Illustrated camera. You know, like you would subscribe to Sports Illustrated back in the day. They send you a phone, right? I think that was the type of camera he had.
I think he's just messing with all of us. He does it on purpose.
Yeah, I think
Lindson's easy to rip on. He's like this tech investor entrepreneur who's sucks at tech. You know?
It's too easy. It's like a softball. It's like Lindsay softball. Yeah,
it is. All right, BC. Forget Lindsay.
Do we have more with Brian today than Lindsay? Because these interviews, they're just too short.
Listen, Brian, I'm not even going to ask you a question. I want you to tell us, what's on your mind? What are you seeing out there? First thing that comes to mind. What are you paying attention to this morning, this week?
Oh boy, there's so many things. Well, first of all, more constructive charts. I just caught the last bit of your segment, and I know Palantir was one of the ones I sent over, but I've seen more and more charts that if you look at them, you go, okay, there's a reasonable bottom. There's a rally off the bottom. There's a pullback and consolidation. There's a sideways movement, and now they're starting to move up again. So that's number one. But I tell you, I am on a quest. I know it's probably a horrific quest, but I'm on a quest to tell people not to listen to stories and narratives anymore. Like, it's so frustrating. Even the beginning of this last week, I heard people saying, how will we get out of this range? Like, I don't understand how we're going to get. And what they meant was, what's the story? What's the catalyst? And I was telling people in the Lund loop and the Discord, on random people on the street, I was just saying, look, you don't know whatever is going to get us out of this range. You have no idea what it is. It's going to be something we're not even thinking about, or it will be nothing. And sure enough, just out of the blue, we went out of this range. And it hurts my soul because there's so many people that get fixed in what they think has to happen or is going to happen, that they're not paying attention to what is happening. I think back in October, how many people thought we're falling off a cliff? That's the end of it. When housing stocks started to get strong, they're like, there's no way housing stocks will ever rally because we have interest rates or whatever. There's no way big tech will. And they missed out on 6 months. And I know, JC, in your mind, you're going, screw them, right? You're like, who cares, right? But
I don't care. I'm happy. I'm happy they're getting crushed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know you
short. Their short exposure coming into the year, it was part of the catalyst for this unwind. So thank you, angry shorts.
I get it, but I'm like that school teacher that changed your life. If I can reach one person, that's all, right? I just want one person to not.
Nobody's listening, Brian. You think these psychopaths care what you think? No one's listening, man.
Where's your empathy, JC?
So Brian, it's a valiant effort. We appreciate you.
Nobody cares. I love you for it, Brian. I love you for it. No one's gonna listen to you, dude.
Are you saying that the market wasn't screaming the past 2 days because of hopes about a debt ceiling negotiation?
I know.
Said.
I think what frustrates me so much is people feel like they have to understand or divine what the story is for them to believe in the price action, right? And look, I'm an optimist in life, but I'm also a cynic. And there's been too many things where I said that won't work and I missed out. Like, I'll give you a great example. Back in the 90s, when I was a kid, there were these things called wacky stickers, right? They were kind of like trading cards, and I loved them and forgot about them for years. Then in the early 90s, internet started to bubble up, and I'm like, hey, maybe I can find these things again. So I got on the internet, I found a site. People were actually trading these and other things. And they were, they'd say, hey, I've got some. And they go, cool, send them to me and I'll pay you. And I called my friend. I said, how stupid are these people, right? Someone somewhere in the world is going to send something to somebody else, and they're counting on them to pay them. What a rube. They're so stupid. Turns out that was eBay, right? But I couldn't see that, right? I couldn't see how that would work, and how are you going to transfer the money? How can you how can you make sure this works? I should have just been saying, look at the price, right? But my story prevented me from buying into the price action. And that's all I want people to do, is just say, forget about the story. Try to be, I know it's cliche, but be that Bruce Lee thing, right? Be like water, just flow whichever way it goes. So,
yep.
Yeah,
So
and remember, listen, not to get all philosophical, but it goes back to evolution. Humans need to be told stories. Humans. That's how one of
Yep.
the reasons we're here is because we tell each other stories. We have a natural desire to be told stories and to tell people stories. It's perfectly natural. If you didn't have those feelings, that would be incredibly inhumane. But it's up to us as investors to overcome those evolutionary desires and biases and not let that affect our decision making in our portfolio. Right? It's more
Yeah.
about understanding, you know, and once you realize, oh my God, I'm a grown adult. I don't need to be told bedtime stories to go to sleep. I could just follow
Yeah.
price and have a plan. And once you
Well,
realize that, and most investors never get to that point,
yeah,
fortunately.
it's also about understanding our human nature, right? The human nature we have outside of the market clashes with the way you have to think about the market. And I always go back to when you're a kid, you go to you go to Sears with your parents, and they're going to buy a refrigerator. They want the lowest price, right? When you get a car, you want the lowest price because you're buying a depreciating asset. We bring that attitude into the market. We don't even know we're doing it, right? So when a stock is going down, like when you've got a NVTA, a Kathy Wood pick that went from 60 to $1. People think, oh, I'm getting a better deal as it's going down, when really the stock just in a race to zero. But we don't know that. So we've got these two different mindsets, one that works perfectly well outside the market, one that leads you to ruin in the market. And we have to be able to identify that and understand what we're doing there.
Yeah,
BC Lund, I don't know if you got the memo, but it is Crypto Fridays here on the morning show.
I
And
heard.
I know that you are not just a crypto guy. I mean, you're kind of whatever's moving guy, and I appreciate that from you. But let's move over to crypto, and what's on your mind? What are you seeing there?
Well, so look, it's well documented. I believe 99.9% of all crypto coins are going to zero.
Didn't they
I do.
already? Didn't that already happen?
there's still
It feels like, look, I know that the technology is going to be here, and I'm sure that like Bitcoin, Ethereum, a couple others, maybe, well, I won't say it, are going to stay. But like, I think it's all a joke. We're going to look back in this period and go, what were we doing? I personally believe that when crypto either goes down or sideways and the market goes up, like when it's no longer, and I feel like it's more like that. You guys would know if it's still correlated. I feel that's a good sign, because crypto to me is a sign of that froth that we had in 2000 or 2020, 2021. So I think it's healthier for the market to diverge like that. Having said that, Bitcoin, I think I sent a chart over. It looks like it might have just a short-term head and shoulders top. I know every technician sees a head and shoulders in every chart they look at, but it feels like there's a little bit of a short-term.
throw up chart 18. Yeah. Is it going to complete though? Are we going to see any downside? From here.
I don't know, but you look at that. Look at the left-hand side there. I mean, look at that big, that straight run. Like, there's not a lot of support in that area. So I think if it does break down, there's a good chance you get down to those March lows. I'm not saying that Bitcoin's going to crash. I'm just saying short term, it looks a little toppy.
JC hates this short-term top narrative. He's not buying it.
All right, go ahead. Tell me the counter argument.
Well, Steve is specifically talking about, some of the more value cyclical oriented areas like industrials and some of these metals and miners, where you're seeing these distribution patterns, quote unquote distribution patterns. But these head and shoulders tops, these reversals, by definition, need something to reverse. And in a lot of these cyclical areas, you just haven't seen this uptrend, this massive rally to reverse. Like, there's nothing to reverse. In a lot of these cases, they look like consolidations after that initial thrust off the lows. So if we stick with that theme in the cyclicals and move that over to Bitcoin, which makes no sense whatsoever at all, by the way, we're talking about two completely different groups. In the case of Bitcoin, I don't think you're wrong. Bitcoin's a unique animal here because that 31, 29, 30, 31,000 level is a ton of overhead supply. So to see distribution here and perhaps another test of that 20,000, if you're right, and this is distributive in nature, and we do break 20,000 is next, I don't think that's the end of the world. Like Brian said, that's not a crash. That's just a pretty normal correction. A 50, what would that be? That would be a 30-something% correction in Bitcoin. Like, that's nothing. We'll get one of those over the weekend. You know what I'm saying? Not a big deal at all. I'm not making that bet. I think that we continue to churn up here for some time. I think ultimately we do break out above 30, 31 without having to retest that 20. If we do get down there to 20, I'm a buyer. That's where I was a buyer before. So I'll be a buyer again in that environment. But I got to tell you, I'd rather be a buyer above 31.
I'd rather
Yeah.
be a buyer at 25. I wouldn't mind seeing a nice little retest of this base breakout from earlier in the year.
Yeah, I'll tell you something though that you said in that statement was so important. The context of that pattern, right, where it is, and I see this all the time. Like I'm not a CMT, I'm not as expert at charts and technicals as you guys are, but I see people all the time. Oh look, here's a reversal bar, but it's like in the middle of a base, and I'm like, that's not a reversal bar, right? So understanding that context of the pattern and what happened before it is so key.
Right. Brian Shannon always says that. Shout out Brian, came on the show on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Look where it's come from, right? When you're looking at these patterns, when you're looking at the market behavior, putting into context with where it's been over the last months, 3 months, 6 months, year, like what's transpired. So if you're looking for a reversal pattern, ask yourself, is there something even to reverse here?
yeah. So let me ask you a question on that because I've been going through Brian's book and I love it, right? But I don't see you guys use VWAP that much. Like, how do you weigh in on VWAP, or do you use it, or
Yeah, we use it. Yeah, for
do
sure.
you?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, 100%. We've been anchoring the S&P 500 to, and the Nasdaq for that matter, to those all-time highs a year and a half ago. That has been a good anchor for sure. Yeah, we use it. Yeah, we
Okay.
like it.
I got all the guys into it. We're all using it. VWAPs are on every single one of my charts. Like I'll use TC2000 and other software during the day, but when I'm publishing, I'm using
Yeah.
Optima, and I'm only putting on whatever indicator I'm specifically talking about, like in a tweet. So I'll strip everything else off. But they're
So
on the charts.
Steve, you're already upsetting me because you're saying VWAP, right? So
Yeah,
it's
I don't.
right.
I disagree with Brian. The VWAP. I can't.
Do you say GIF? Do you say GIF too, or GIF?
Well, remember, Brian, Brian Shannon is from Massachusetts, so everything's like
Right.
VWAP, macaw. He's from Massachusetts. He hasn't always lived in Colorado, so he still has that New England twang in him.
Got it. So it's a catsup thing. I got
Yeah,
it. All right.
yeah.
All right,
All right.
what's your favorite chart out here? I mean, is it DraftKings? Is it Palantir?
Is it a pot stock?
Yeah, yeah. Don't even get me started on pot stocks. I
like getting you started on pot stocks because it's funny.
Man, it's cruel at this point. Like it was fun for a while, but like, it's like that Simpson thing where like he's dead already. Like that's how I feel about pot stocks. I like the Shopify chart. I think that's kind of interesting. And that, speaking of which, that's something that Brian put up, I think either earlier this week or last week, about how it had broken above the, I think it was the VWAP from the first of the year, or maybe it was the all-time high. I can't remember, but you can really see a change in character in the chart. And, but I think it's important to, just because, like, this is our thing I tell people, just because it's done this work doesn't mean you can just blindly buy it, right? You still have to be strategic, and it's pulling back right now in a really tight channel, which I like. So,
and they keep beating earnings. This one resolved higher from base a long time ago. This is one of my one of the better names that I bought last year. Jumped the gun on this one. But no, Shopify looks great, high and tight now, following another earnings beat.
What's interesting about Shopify is that you're kind of getting a lot of things that are working here. Shopify, we know it's software, right? We know it's technology, but you can argue that it's like consumer discretionary, right? Retail, and we're seeing a ton of strength in consumer discretionary. In fact, on an equally weighted basis, it's the best performing sector off of last summer's lows. So even though Shopify isn't technically consumer discretionary, it does have an element to that. I would think, no?
yeah, and what's interesting about Shopify, and I've been talking about this in the last week or so, is so I had Shopify with 3 other stocks that I called the at-home stocks during the pandemic. So it was like Zoom, Palantir, Shopify, and I think DocuSign, right? And of course, they all have been beat to hell over the last year and a half. But you're seeing some of them now look better, while the other one's still like hot death. Like Peloton looks horrible. So what I'm trying to tell people is, just because we see the market lifting doesn't mean you can blindly go in and just buy whatever stocks, right? You're seeing this bifurcation and this separation between stocks that may come back someday and stocks that may be dead forever.
By the way, this is another great example. We keep seeing it again and again. That same pattern, that same smiley face, throughout 2022 and into 2023, resolving higher. Like this theme, particularly in tech and growth, and in this case, software, and you're seeing it in it. Just you keep seeing that again and again. So when people are talking about like weakening market breadth, deteriorating market breadth, those people are just they're not doing the work. Because if you're doing the work and you're going through every single chart instead of waiting for your stupid computer to tell you that stocks are going up, and you just go one by one, you're going to see this. You're literally seeing breadth improvement since last summer. So the fact that people are still saying that breadth is deteriorating, they're just not doing anything. They're just pulling up some random, advanced decline line or percentage of stocks above whatever random moving average. Like, that's what they're doing. And they're assuming that that means breadth deterioration because they're too lazy to actually do the work. Do the fucking work, or find somebody who does and read their notes.
Yeah, or I would argue that they're in denial because, like we talked about earlier, they've got a narrative. They've already. Spencer's coming to kick me out. That where they think
fun
they
police is here. Fun police.
Right? I feel like that Hook thing, right? They have in vaudeville, where they know what's going to happen in their mind, and they're just saying, price is moving, but wait for the rug pull, right? It's coming any moment, right? That's the mentality.
A lot of that on Twitter. Just wait. Oh God. Stop.
All right.
Before he runs, one question. Spencer, one more question. Brian Lund, right now, gun to your head. You have to buy one pot stock. You can hold it as long as you want. One pot stock. What is it? Go.
I think it has to be Tilray. I think. I just.
Is that like the blue chip? Is that the blue chip of pot?
That's oxymoron, JC.
Yeah, there's some guy out there who we all know that was a pot bull that says, "Oh, these are the pot FANG stocks," right? So it was a FANG of pot, and whatever.
Did you see Brian Shannon stopped in the chat to say hi? He was listening to everything we were saying.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, we were giving him love. We were giving him his flowers.
I threw the link to Brian's Twitter and Brian's site in the description. Check it out. Brian Lund, the Lund Loop. Brian, thanks a lot for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks bro. Guys. Appreciate it.
Adios.
All right.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. Yeah, I hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, hit the ground, then it go off. Yeah, run it. Ooh, I really feel it's my time. Think it's my